Hey guys, welcome to Sonic Discovery. I am your host, David Correa. On this episode, we'll be talking about 4 albums. New stuff from Post Malone, Speedy Ortiz, DJ Koze, and a surprise one from Beak. Well guys, thanks so much for clicking play on the episode. We're going to start things off with the second album from rapper Post Malone. This is called Beer Bongs and Bentleys. Now, I wasn't too familiar with his first release, Stoney, so I went back and gave it a listen, and I became aware that so many of these tracks were massive hits on the radio. Congratulations, White Iverson. What I like about him is that he is doing a style that's very popular now, but I think there's something that sets him apart from everybody else. He's not the strongest rapper, and he's not the strongest singer, but he's able to blend the two together and also bring in different influences from different genres. He's been known to play his acoustic guitar, is a fan of rock and country. So there's moments in which you hear that coming through on that album. And on this one too, you get a very similar thing. There's actually moments here where he crosses over into the pop side. I mean, more than just pop rap, but an actual pop song. The album just came out and it's already a huge success. It set the record for most streams in a week, but I'm sure that Drake, who he took it from, is going to take it right back when his album drops later this year. This is kind of a long album. It's over an hour long, and there's quite a bit of filler on here. There's, many where that have that trap style, but I think that, at least personally, where he's more successful is when he ventures out of that and experiments more with his sound. The album opens up with the track Paranoid, which has a familiar commercial sound, very much a pop rap. And here, he's talking about his mistrust in people since he's gained more popularity. He never really knows if people are just being nice or they want something from him. I was fond of the track Rich and Sad, which has a nice organ playing in the background. Here, he's stating that all the stuff that he raps about, the success, the money, the cars, they really don't matter that much because in the end, they really couldn't keep his girl to stay. Zack and Codeine, which is a play on the Disney show The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, which I thought was pretty clever, is an alright track that follows the same type of pop rap formula. Here he's rapping about all of his exes that he's going to partake in, so he doesn't plan to do a lot of sleeping that night. A similar vibe can be found on Taking Shots, but I did like the hazy sounding production here that made it pretty catchy to my ears. Next, we have the massive hit Rockstar, which I, definitely tired of, but when it comes through on the album, I still played it. I still like it. It's very catchy. Here he's talking about all the different exes that he does that make him feel like a rock star. I wasn't too impressed with 21 Savage's verse on here though. Over Now opens up with a nice guitar riff and has a darker tone to the music. And we actually get some live drumming provided from Tommy Lee of Motley Crue fame. And this I thought was a pretty strong track as well, as he's talking about the pain he's feeling after a breakup. But he's not just talking about his pain, but he's also talking about his anger. And that's reflected on his vocal delivery and the music itself. Psycho is the current song on radio, and this features Ty Dolla $ign, and this is kind of like a snoozer to me. There's so many much better tracks on this album. I'm surprised this was released. I don't really care to hear more about their wealth and their excess, but this one does have some nice melodic moments being sung here by Post. Better Now was one of my favorite tracks on this album. I was a big fan of the hazy production with the muted guitar and just overall catchy sound. And here he's constantly thinking about all the good memories that they shared and hopes that she's thinking the same thing. Ball for me is another standout track here, in my opinion. This one has a great feature from Nicki Minaj. This is much more of a banger on the album, as he's talking about his girl that expects to be living a lavish lifestyle. I'm not too sure because I didn't see him in the credits, but that hook definitely sounds like it's being sung by Adam Levine. Other Side is another one in which he's talking about his relationship woes, and not all the models in the world could really replace his girl. The production on here has a much more pop-leaning sound, which was a nice surprise for me. Stay is a track here that has potential to have huge crossover appeal. This has more of a pop sound with acoustic guitar. It almost could play kind of like an Ed Sheeran song, but also people that like Oasis Wonderwall could also enjoy this track. There's a little solo in here that reminded me a lot of something that George Harrison would play. Blame It On Me is another standout track for me. This has a very catchy sound with hazy production, as he's talking about the darkness that his lifestyle has brought to his life. I really like the bass wobble that's going on this track. Then the album closes with the Car Love Trio, as I like to call it, starting off with 92 Explorer, which was the strongest of the three. I like the tropical sounding production on the song, but here he's just, claiming love for his cars and driving around. The same thing happens on Candy Paint and Sugar Wraith, both of them having more of a catchy pop sound, but I didn't really need other songs talking about his love for his car. Overall, I was actually pretty happy with this. There's not a lot of bangers on the album, and the ones that tend to be in that style aren't really the strongest. I feel, like I said, that when he experiments more with his sound and brings in more hazy production or even his acoustic guitar like on Stay, I think that's where he shines the brightest. This is going to get a score of a 7 out of 10 from me. So if you haven't heard this new album from Post Malone, I'd say, yeah, go ahead. Give it a listen. Next up for review, we have the third release from Speedy Ortiz. This is called Twerk Verse. Now this band is fronted by Sadie DeBoos, and they have a pretty interesting sound. They're an indie rock band that definitely likes to crank the volume up, so they have more of a rowdier sound. They also do, bring in some pop elements here, but it's very unconventional. These melodies will just suddenly show up out of nowhere, where the rest of the song, can be a little strange and clunky sounding, and then, this poppy moment comes in and then fades away again. From their sound, I really feel like they have a big influence from Liz Phair and Veruca Salt, which I hear a little mixture of both of those throughout this album. We open up strong with the track Buck Me Off, which is one of the catchier songs on here, but also has a nice crunch on the hook. Here she's saying that she really isn't good for you, so it's best to not have her around. Lean In When I Suffer is a little weird musically. It takes a lot of sharp turns, but still a satisfying track. Here she's saying that this one person isn't really worthy of her love, yet she still seeks for their attention. Lucky 88 is the leading single from the album, and this has a different sound with more prominent synths and also more of an emphasis on the bass with added percussion. This does end up having a pretty catchy hook, as she's talking about losing the feeling of really caring anymore. Can I Kiss You is another track that has a real unique structure to the sound with some heavier moments. And here she's talking about her insecurities over love. Backsliding has a mellower sound at times, but still has a punchy hook with some loud guitar work throughout. Villain here provides us with another real unique sound. It has a deeper growl that I enjoyed. And here she's talking about a specific time in which she was a victim of sexual assault. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on sonically with the next track, I'm Blessed, which was one of my personal favorites. This one opens up with a darker, sinister tone, but yet it has several catchy moments throughout and even a little solo in there. Here she sings about a witch and her unrequited love. Moving In has some nicer melodic moments as she's talking about allowing someone to get closer to her than usual. And then the album closes with the catchiest song of them all, You Hate the Title, which, just like it says, it's all about you liking the song, but not thinking too highly about the title itself. Overall, I was happy with this release. It wasn't anything that was overly catchy. There's definitely catchy moments in there, but what I liked more is that the music is not afraid to be a little daring and take some weird turns from time to time. Actually, takes weird turns a lot throughout this album. This is going to get a score of a 7 out of 10 from me. So if you're interested in listening to a rock record that is very unconventional but yet catchy at the same time, then you might want to give this a listen. Next up, we'll be talking about the third release from German producer DJ Koze. This is called Knock Knock. So like I mentioned, this is his third album, despite the fact that he's released a lot of different EPs and done a lot of remixes of tracks, so he has a lot of material out there. This is actually the first album I'm checking out by this artist, and I was really happy with this because it is probably one of the strongest dance albums that I've heard this year. It has different phases here. I feel that it has its tracks that are a little calmer. It has tracks that are more clubby, meant to dance to. And then everything else just kind of falls somewhere in between. So in this review, we're going to go through the different sections at a time. We're going to start things off with the calmer tracks, which includes the opener, Club der Ewigten. I know I said that completely wrong, but I don't really speak German. This has a really nice sound with a light beat and different effects that give it kind of like a psychedelic feel. It really reminded me of stuff you'd hear from the group The Avalanches. Music on My Teeth is a nice little dreamy folk detour that the album goes on, and this has vocals and guitar from singer-songwriter Jose Gonzalez. Money Finster is a nice tranquil track with vocals from Kurt Wagner of the band Landchop. Here his vocals are soaked in auto-tuned, and there's also some nice little synth patterns throughout the track that I really enjoyed. And then the closing track, Drone Me Up Flashy, which features vocals from Sophia Kennedy, has her singing in German over a tranquil track that has these lush vocal layering underneath that, once you get to the end, it gives you like a really nice warm feeling that closes out the album very strongly. My favorite section of them all were the clubbier tracks though, which includes Illumination, which features vocals from Rosen Murphy. This is a great pop dance track that just will have you grooving the whole way through. Another standout track on this album is the track Pick Up, which has this nice hypnotic feel to it that incorporates a vocal sample of Gladys Knight. Seeing Aliens is another standout track that is found later on in the album, and this one is guaranteed to fill up that dance floor. And then we have the rest of the tracks that kind of fall somewhere in between, which includes Bonfire, which happens earlier in the album. This has a nice little light house beat, deeper bass effect, and a sample of Bon Iver that very well could have passed for any of the songs he's released on his last album. Moving in a Liquid features vocals from Eddie Fummler, and this has a nice house beat, woozy effects that create a nice little space that you can really get lost in. Colors of Autumn has a feature from Speech of Arrested Development, and here we get a nice little groove with a repeated guitar hook, wobbly bass, and a snappy beat. Baby, How Much I Love You has a relaxed beat, wobble synths, and loop synth effects that make up the majority of this track. And then we have Lord Knows, which has a real chill sound that again reminded me a lot of stuff that you'd hear from the Avalanches. Overall, I was really happy with this release. Like I mentioned before, I feel like this is the strongest dance record that I've heard this year. So this is going to get a score of an 8.5 out of 10 from me. If you're interested in listening to a dance record that is definitely going to put you out on the floor, but also can have its calming moments, then I highly recommend you check this out. And finally, here we have the surprise release from the experimental band Beak. This is called LA Playbook. Now, I'm not familiar with this band at all. I've always been interested in checking out their music though, because one of the members of the group is Geoff Barrow. I hope I'm saying that right. I feel like I'm not. But he is from the band Portishead, and I'm a big fan of Portishead. And here he's accompanied by Billy Fuller and Will Young. And the three of these guys create some pretty interesting stuff. Some of this is a lot more experimental and has some darker tones to it. But there's others where some synths are more prominent, some catchier moments come in here, and also some moments that'll please fans of psychedelic rock. The album opens up with That Cold, which has an eerie dystopian sound. There are vocals on this track, but it's really hard to tell exactly what they're saying, which I feel kind of adds to the eerie vibe overall. A similar thing is going on the next track, The Russian, where this just kind of has some slight psychedelic feel with the synths that are included. Mono has a robotic beat, a nice bass line, and these synths that fade in and out in the mix that create this real trippy effect. Broken Window was a personal favorite of mine. This has this simple guitar line that's repeated over and over, along with kind of like a dancier beat, and the synths here have like a psychedelic feel to them. Ken is one that starts off with a real subdued sound, but around the 3-minute mark, it kicks it to another gear with a faster pace, more propulsive drumming, and this tripped out synth line. The Meter is another where you can't really make out the vocals too well, but I really enjoyed the interweaving guitar parts going on and the drumming. This really reminded me of something that could have been found on Radiohead's Amnesiac. There's No One has the only feature on the album, which is from rapper John Wayne. And this kind of reminded me of the stuff that Bad Bad Not Good did when they had their collaborative album with Ghostface Killah. The difference here, though, is that it goes on a really trippy detour in like the middle section, and also it has these haunting vocals all throughout the song, both touches that I really enjoyed. Trong is a synth-led song that creates a lot of tension, and like maybe the title is alluding to, this definitely sounds like it belongs on the Tron soundtrack. Pidge has a continuous rhythm with drums and guitar, and it really starts building tension too, as it starts getting a lot more climactic around the 2-minute mark. And then the album closes with a cover of Pink Floyd's Welcome to the Machine, which you may want to hear a few times because it's very unrecognizable, very different in sound and tone, has much more of a robotic feel, but really fits well within the whole album. I was really impressed with this album as an introduction into Beak. This is going to get a score of a 7.5 out of 10 from me. So if you're interested in checking out some experimental rock, I recommend you give this album a listen. Well guys, thanks so much for clicking play on the episode. If you have any comments, anything you'd like to suggest to me, go ahead and leave those down there in the comment section at the bottom. And while you're down there, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. On the next one, I'll be talking about the newest release from Beach House. So be on the lookout for that.